Chair recognizes Ms. Brown for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, we are all too familiar with the horrifying statistics that gun violence is the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country. Since the start of this year, 10 people under the age of 25 were shot and killed in Ohio's 11th congressional district. 10 young people whose lives were taken too soon and did not have the opportunity to realize their potential. I have in my hand a list of reports describing each of these tragedies. Mr. Chairman, in recognition of the lives lost, I ask unanimous consent that this list be entered into the record.
So moved.
Thank you. Just recently, an 18-year-old high school senior was waiting for the bus at John Adams High School, just waiting for the bus. And while on his way home from school, he was shot and killed. Mr. Chairman, John Adams High School is my alma mater. A few days ago, 2 men in Cleveland were arrested for selling an undercover ATF agent nearly 100 guns as part of an ongoing law enforcement operation to combat gun smuggling. Many of the guns recovered by the law enforcement were ghost guns, firearms that can be assembled in parts without serial numbers, making them extremely difficult to trace. That's why they're called ghost guns. ATF estimates that about 45,000 ghost guns have been recovered from crime scenes since 2016, with more than 19,000 recovered in 2021 alone. As they are a massive source of violent crime, the reasonable thing to do is regulate ghost guns. But reasonable regulations to protect Americans, like tracking ghost guns, have been strongly opposed by Republicans and the gun industry. And that is despite thousands of American mayors and the majority of the American people begging for more regulation. Because in Republican eyes, not being allowed to manufacture and own deadly weapons of war somehow infringes on the Second Amendment. So, Mr. Wilcox, if you would, please describe the law enforcement challenges presented by the prevalence of ghost guns.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and I completely agree with your sentiments and respect how you're lifting up the survivors from your community. I think this is one of the fastest growing threats to public safety in our country because the untraceable product is the dream of gun traffickers and prohibited people who want to acquire easy-to-make guns with no record and no background check. I think, we heard a suggestion that these are incredibly difficult to make. They're hunks of metal. That's not the case at all. These are readily converted by just about anyone. And building a ghost gun from the parts that these companies are selling is as close to gunsmithing as making a Lego set is as close to architectural design. These are not the same thing. This is something that is very easy to do with common tools and can be done in about an hour. So imagine acquiring these parts with nothing but a credit card or mailing address, some common hand tools, and an hour of time, and now you have an untraceable handgun. That's exactly what a gun trafficker wants, and it's why I'm proud ATF is stepping up to regulate that as Congress intended.
On that point, can you please describe how the ATF supports law enforcement in their daily activities, particularly when guns are recovered in a crime?
As I understand it, talking to multiple local law enforcement officials across this country, ATF is the best partner they have in federal law enforcement. They're on the scene, they're in the field, and they're doing the hard work. Supporting ATF is supporting law enforcement because that's who's helping them with ballistics information, with crime gun tracing, and connecting the dots to trafficking channels. As I mentioned earlier, the only way to get from the shooter to the supplier is in partnership between local law enforcement and ATF.
Thank you so much. Let the record reflect, I am a licensed gun owner and respect the rights of individuals afforded under the Second Amendment. However, we can preserve those rights while also implementing common sense gun safety measures, many of which are supported by our law enforcement to help them do their jobs and keep all of us safe. Despite this, we continue to hear talking points across the aisle against legitimate restrictions on firearms that would support the job of law enforcement and keep our children and community safe. In the 117th Congress, I was proud to support the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which provided hundreds of millions of dollars to support common sense gun reform. In fact, Cleveland was already awarded $2 million from that fund to support city-led collaborative community violence intervention and public engagement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand my time has expired, but I do want to say this. President Biden is taking action that is desperately needed and timely. And along with that, the congressional Democrats are ready and willing to continue our diligent work to save lives and keep our country and communities and children safe.
Chair recognizes
Thank
Mr.
you,
Jordan.
Mr. Chairman.